want to thank everyone again for joining us here tonight. Tonight's presentation is entitled, Discover the Best Places to Fish in Massachusetts with MassWildlife. We're going to let Jim Legacy, an Angler Education Program Coordinator for MassWildlife, be your guide for all things fishing in Massachusetts. Jim will recommend spots to fish around the state with particular attention paid to spots within an hour drive of Tewksbury. He will also discuss programs run by the state's Fish and Wildlife Agency that's designed to get people outside and get them on the water. And as I said, Jim is happy to answer any fishing-related questions from the audience. And tonight's talk is sponsored by the Tewksbury Open Space and Recreation Committee and the Friends of the Tewksbury Public Library. So the 20 of us or so that are watching live and the hundreds that are going to watch on demand, let's give a big virtual round of applause to Jim for joining us here tonight. And Jim, you can take it away. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Robert. And thank you, Jennifer. I got to put a plug in for you guys. You guys asked me this. Gosh, we've been in communication since last fall, I think, on this. And I was supposed to come in March, early April. I forget exactly when, and do this live. So this is the next best thing, and we've been doing a lot of these. Sadly, in some ways, I'd rather be there in person doing group programs, but it's definitely a lot better than nothing, and we can highlight some of the things that we can't highlight in person by doing the virtual program. So as Robert said, my name is Jim Legacy. I coordinate the Angler Education Program for MassWildlife. What is that? Well, MassWildlife is your state fish and wildlife agency, and we have programs designed to get people outside interested in the outdoors. Experience in nature, and fishing education is one great way. And in fact, fishing a lot of times is folks' first introduction to the outdoors. And it was certainly one of my first introductions to the outdoors. And it's a gateway activity in that regard. It can open up your eyes and make you a steward one day of the outdoors. And it's so important to become intimate with the outdoors and care about it and know its interworkings. And fishing is a great way just to grab you and get you interested. So my job as coordinator of the Angler Education Program is to inspire that interest in the public. And we do it with about 100 to 125 programs a year throughout the state. Learn to fish programs, and I'll explain more about that in a bit. And we do it with over 100 instructors and partners. And some of our best partners, one of them gave a talk to you last week, Barbara Bowles from the Department of Conservation and Recreation, great gal, and wonderful conservationist and steward of the outdoors. So we have all these partners and instructors that help us with that mission. So what I'm going to do is we're going to walk through kind of a PowerPoint. I don't know your level of fishing knowledge or interest. That's the only bad thing here. I'm sure some of you are ardent anglers and are looking for next level tips, and others are just newbies and are looking to start. And with the title of this, that's pretty much, looking for fishing spots throughout Massachusetts. In my tenure as Angler Ed coordinator for the last 25 years, we run programs throughout the state from the Cape to the Berkshires. So I've gotten decent knowledge of certain water bodies. So I want to pass those along, particularly the ones in the greater Tewksbury and North Shore area, places to hot spots and places to go fishing. And then if our web resources are working, a little spoiler alert warning, I checked it before this started, and for some reason, that portion of the website wasn't working. And it's a kind of a map that brings you around the state and brings you right into fishing locations. They take it down and do maintenance from time to time, so maybe that's up. Maybe it'll be fine by the time we get to that in a half hour or so, 20 minutes to a half hour. But if it's not, my apologies. We can still trying to talk you through the state and great places to go. And then through questions, we can answer more. That is the bad thing about these virtual programs. We're at the whim of technology, and it can be very fickle at times. I've experienced that in my few months doing these. So I'm going to walk through this PowerPoint. We're going to talk about the agency and about what I do and fishing spots to go to. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. Again, MassWildlife is your state fish and wildlife agency. The title of this is Fishing with MassWildlife. And as your state fish and wildlife agency, I think you should know a little bit about it. It's kind of the go-to if you have any interest in fish and wildlife or any questions or issues around your backyard with wildlife. We want you to come to us first. We were founded over 150 years ago in response to the decline in Atlantic salmon. a fish and a fishery, and that's how we came to be. Our responsibilities are huge: managing, conserving, and enhancing all inland freshwater fish and wildlife, both plants and animals. So we have a huge charge with a pretty small employee base. We have about 180 to 200 employees on any given year. We have main offices in Westboro, out in the kind of the eastern part of the state, closer to you, and 5 satellite offices scattered around the state from the Berkshires to the Cape, and 5 fish hatcheries, which we'll kind of talk more in depth about tonight as one of the fishing programs. So our wildlife section programs include deer and moose, black bear, waterfowl, turkey, urban wildlife, and forestry programs. Natural heritage and endangered species section is probably one of our largest sections in the agency, and people don't realize that that is the case, that it's one of the largest sections and one of the most important sections, managing all threatened and endangered species throughout the state, rare plants and animals, habitats. We do a lot of environmental review. We do geographic information systems on these habitats, on these species. So kind of at the forefront of those issues, and people that partake in fishing have a big hand in the natural heritage and endangered species section. It's kind of a weird connection. We are a dedicated agency in terms of our funding. So if you buy a fishing or hunting license, you contribute to endangered species management in your state. So that's we've always said hunters and anglers are our first conservationists, because that North American wildlife model was set up just that way. That if you contribute by buying a license, and you contribute to all fish and wildlife management, and particularly the endangered species in the state. That's hugely important issue for all of us. So that's probably one of the largest sections we have. And then we have REALTY section, and that section, just like the name implies, is for buying land for people and wildlife, and laying it aside in perpetuity so it can't be developed. So a huge, another critical need in Massachusetts, where you have 6.8 million people on about 5 million acres. So we're crammed pretty tight here. So the land that we have, we want to take care of, and we're always looking for new lands and resources to protect, so it won't be developed, particularly for given species and for recreating. The 2 sections we're going to spotlight tonight, though, are our fishery section with the trout stocking program and some of that research. And the fishery section is involved in the hatchery programs and black bass management, sausage management, river and stream management, lake and pond management, environmental review. So it is one of the smaller unheralded sections, but with a huge charge. And then the information education section, another small section that's involved with educating the public to our fish and wildlife resources. And mine in particular, we're going to focus on tonight, is the angler education program. But if you ever want to learn to hunt, you learn to fish, you come to us. If you want to send your child to our conservation camp in a good year, it's not open this year, sadly, like so many things aren't. But that's a wonderful program, 2-week conservation education out in right now the Eastern Berkshires. Project Wild, Project Growing Up Wild are school-based programs where we train the trainer, we train teachers to bring natural resource education into the schools. We have a Becoming an Outdoorswoman program that we've had for over 20 years, and that is basically to get women involved in the traditional male-dominated pursuits of hunting and fishing. We're trying to make that more inclusive now, more about families and anyone that wants to learn with some of those programs. And of course, our biggest programs now are our social media, our Facebook, our Instagram programs that really spotlight individual species, individual programs. So just go to our website and you can learn about all this and more. And we'll take a walk through that in a bit. And then we have a quarterly magazine that highlights a lot of what we do. And then we have a hunter education program too. It's one of our education programs. So that's the fisheries section and the information education section we're going to talk about more. What we accomplished, of course, land protection, management of all the inland fish and wildlife species, recreational opportunities for folks like you that want to get out and about. Particularly this year, there's never been more people out tromping through the outdoors. And for the most part, that's a good thing. Some people are leaving things that we don't want out there and kind of abusing it. So there's a little bit of a learning curve there. But there's no better remedy to COVID and so much of what ails folks in general than just getting out in nature, whether it's camping, hiking, fishing, bird watching, rock climbing, hunting, any outdoor pursuit. Getting out, touching, feeling nature is a wonderful thing. So we do all this and many more. It would take hours to get into all the programs that we do. I'm going to focus on what I coordinate, the small little niche that I occupy within MassWildlife. It's called the Angler Education Program. And again, that program just seeks to get people outside through the experience of fishing. It's not just a fishing program, I tell people. Hopefully it motivates people to make that a lifelong passion and or make the outdoors a lifelong passion. It's an easy way to get out and touch and feel nature for the first time. It's just jumping in and grabbing a rod. It's not for everyone, but some people, they have that opportunity and then they love being on the water so much, they end up being a canoe or kayak boater, and that's wonderful too, just getting outside and appreciating the outdoors. So again, fostering a public appreciation and understanding of our state's aquatic resources through the experience of fishing. So pardon the pun, fishing is my hook to get you out there. 4 main components of the program, our larger family fishing festivals. Sadly, we haven't done any of those this year because those are group events that we have sometimes hundreds or even 1,000 people come out to them. They're not derbies, there's no competition, they're strictly education events. We do them with partners throughout the state, both governmental and non-governmental partners to pull these off, and they're just wonderful programs to introduce folks to fishing. We do a lot of small, short programs called fishing clinics, 2 or 3 hour learn to fish programs where it's mostly all hands-on, and these are a very popular option. Our clinics are, we do fly tying, fly fishing, saltwater fishing, ice fishing. Our sister agency, the Division of Marine Fisheries, is getting more and more into fishing education now. So, excuse me, with a lot of the saltwater programs, I can kind of point those requests to them, and they're handling a lot of those. So we can ease that because we do so many of the freshwater, and we're mostly about, MassWildlife is mostly about freshwater fishing programs. So that's my main focus tonight, although I am going to talk a little saltwater. And then we have a newer program called our Adult Learn to Fish programs. The research is starting to find now, it used to be that you got to get the kids out, you got to get the kids out. That was the mentality. But now it's as important, if not more important, than getting the adults out, because then you're teaching them, it's kind of train the trainer. You're teaching them to teach their kids or grandkids, and and that's much better because you can hit a lot more people by teaching adults to bring the fishing to the next generation. So that's become a pretty ongoing program for us throughout the years, our adult fishing program. And we've always said if we can't be there to teach you, we can at least loan you some gear. So we always loan out 800 to 1,000 fishing rods and tackle every year to groups wanting to do programs. So it's a very busy program on a normal year. We cannot do these without our volunteer instructors. Just like the Tewksbury Public Library's Friends group, we have a big Friends program too, and they're called Angler Education Program instructors. We have over 100 on any given year, and they help us bring fishing to the masses. They're integral to what we do. We're also involved with trout stocking programs, becoming an outdoors woman, as I explained, in our junior conservation camp. But sadly, that is not going on this year. A little education. I'm going to sneak in a little because I do not know the level of knowledge of the folks here tonight. So I always sneak in a little. Best rod and reels for beginners are the top 2. Spin cast or push button rod and reels, or your spinning rod and reels or your open face. So if you tuned in to get a little tip and technique too, I'm going to sneak a little of that in. Do not start with a fly rod or a bait casting rod and reel. It will only frustrate you. Believe me, tremendously. There was a wonderful movie that came out in the 80s called The River Runs Through It. Movie that it was filmed in Montana, and it showed the romance and beauty of fly fishing. Well, fly fishing is one of those pursuits you graduate to. You don't start by, you don't start driving by driving a semi tractor trailer. So it's similar. You don't start fishing unless you have a dedicated mentor to teach you. You don't start fishing by fly fishing. So a lot of people did. They thought that was fishing. They went out and bought thousands and thousands of fly fishing rods, and the fly fishing industry loved it. People went out and tried to imitate what they saw in the movie, and it was frustrating because it's a little more difficult to fly fish than standard fishing with a spinning or push button rod and reel. So that put off a lot of people of fishing. A lot of nice fly rods were sitting in garages and basements for a lot of years, getting dusty and not getting used. So start with the proper equipment, and you'll have a lot of fun. And the proper equipment is the top 2. the push button and the spinning rod and reel. And the correct way to hold them in your hand, the one on the bottom is the spin casting. You're going to hold it with the reel sitting up, and the spinning rod and reel, you're going to hold it with the reel underneath. A lot of reasons for that. I'm not going to get into that right now. If you guys are beginners, I will throw this out there right now. We do Zoom fishing classes, and we have one tomorrow night, in fact. And you could tune in from 4 to 6 tomorrow afternoon and learn all the basics if you're in the need, with some extra tips if you're a little bit more than a beginner. And that's going to be 4 to 6 tomorrow night. You'd go to our website, go to the calendar section. I'll show you after, and you can register. And if you want more fishing tips and techniques, that's the one to take. Hooking live baits. We'll get into that more tomorrow night if you take that. But there's your 3 big ones right there: your shiners, your worms, and your mealworms. Simple live bait rig, which stresses you do not need much to get involved in fishing. Basic rod and reel, a bobber, hook, and some worms will get it done, and you can catch a tremendous amount of fish and big fish using that technique. All right, so once you've learned how to fish, you got to figure out what you want to go fishing for, right? Well, MassWildlife has a huge program called our trout stocking program, and we have 5 hatcheries and quite a few employees that maintain and manage that program for your enjoyment. And why do we stock fish? Well, that's multifaceted, really. I mean, we stock it for a few reasons. The biggest reason is recreational opportunities for you folks to get out there, give you an excuse to get out there. Trout are just, a little different than a lot of the warm water species. People fish for trout for reasons of their beauty, their palatability. They're one of the best eating fish. A lot of the places where they live, whether it's in Massachusetts, Maine, anywhere else in New England and out west, are some of the more beautiful places you can be in this world. And trout need those pristine, clean habitats, clean water, clean cold water. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. The 3 species that we are involved managing and raising and stocking are rainbow trout, the species right here, upper left, brook trout, right here, and brown trout. The native is the brook trout. This is a Western species, and this is a species from Europe that were introduced well over 100 years ago. And we continue to put them in certain water bodies that will at least hold them seasonally and for your enjoyment, and to supplement the habitat. Program begins in our trout hatcheries, and there's 5 of them. Our hatcheries today, they're pretty ancient, and they're in need of some major upkeep. We just had a study done to see what needs to be done with our hatchery system and how much it would cost. And hopefully in the coming years, we'll be putting some infrastructure resources into that. So as you can see, some of them are well over 100 years old now. The most modern one was 1969. That's our flagship out in Belchertown, or McLaughlin State Fish Hatchery, mostly rainbow trout. That's where most of the rainbow trout come from throughout the state. Our Bitzer Hatchery is in Montague, 1917, and that has a little bit of all the species. Sunderland, similar, just down the road. These are out in the Connecticut River Valley. Our Sandwich Fish Hatchery is on the Cape in Sandwich, and that's our oldest, turned 100 years old 8 years ago. And that does a little bit of everything as well: brook brown, rainbow, and tiger trout. We're going to explain that in a minute. Our Roger Reed Fish Hatchery in Palmer, or our Palmer State Fish Hatchery, raises salmon and trout, and that's been around since 1914. So fish stocking is not a new phenomenon throughout North America. It's well over 100 years old in most states. The 4 species of trout that we produce are brook trout, brown trout, rainbow trout, in a hybrid, a functionally sterile hybrid of wants to keep jumping on me, of a female brown trout and a male brookie. It's kind of like a mule in that it's a sterile hybrid, but it's ornery and it fights really well and it's real pretty. And we produce a few thousand of these in our Sandwich Hatchery, and they're very, very popular. We sprinkle them throughout the state, and folks just love going after them. The big 3, though, are the brook brown and rainbow trouts that we put about 500,000 throughout the state on any given year. Our hatchery program today produces 400,000 to 450,000 pounds of fish, which equates to 500,000 to 600,000 fish, and mostly in the spring, from early March to the end of May. Typically is our spring stocking season. with 50% or more of these fish being 12 inches or longer, and some quite a bit bigger than that, up to 20 plus inches. And again, 90% is in the spring. And we put a small token. We're going to be putting them in here in a few weeks when the water temps drop down. We're going to be stocking them in the fall, and that's late September, early October. We'll put about 10% in there. And again, it's to provide and enhance angling opportunities across the state. Trout stocking report is on our website, so there's no excuse not knowing where we're stocking and what water body. You can do it by town. I checked Tewksbury already, and sadly we don't stock in Tewksbury, but in the surrounding towns. So Tewksbury is kind of bereft of a lot. It's a small town. It doesn't have a tremendous amount of water bodies. But if you just go 10, 15-minute drive, there's all kinds of streams, rivers, and ponds that we do stock. If you know one specifically, you can punch in the water body and see the day we stocked it and the species we put in. If you don't, you just want to see a location, you'd punch in the town, and it shows you those water bodies that were stocked in the town the day of and the species. So great resource to have. Years ago, you'd have to call. You'd have to wait to someone to return your call. Now it's almost instantaneous, like everything else. So that's our trout stock program. We have a Sport Fish Awards program for those competitive folks. Some people need derbies, tournaments, awards to get them the motivation to get outside and fish, and I get that. We help with a lot of derbies. We don't necessarily set them up and run them ourselves, but we do help with instructors and with gear for derbies. We're all kind of about beginning fishing and learning. So, and if you have set up a derby, most people that attend derbies already know how to fish. So Sport Fish Awards is kind of like a statewide derby to compete for largest and most fish. And the rules are all on our website. I'm not going to read them to you. There's two larger categories to catch and keep. If you enjoy eating your fish, or if you catch a trophy fish, you want to bring it to a taxidermist, which is a fish artist, have it mounted. You would keep that fish. You could go to our website, print out the affidavit, you take a picture of it, and it shows you seamlessly how to go ahead and apply that and get an award for it, get a pin, a plaque, or a trophy. And then there's a catch and release category now that's getting more and more popular for people that want to release their fish, so they can, measure it right there with a photograph, submit that with the affidavit, and you'll get, and those are the rules. That's right on our website. If you punch in Sport Fish Awards, what you can win, it doesn't show you the plaques, but we do bronze pins, gold pins, and then the anglers of the year in a few different categories: adult, children, catch and release, catch and keep, get trophies. So some people love it. It's got a hardcore small following, and we're always adding folks to it that enjoy the little competition element in a program once they've learned how to fish. Our web resources, and this is the one I really wanted to spend some time in spotlight. Fingers crossed that that's going to work. If it doesn't work, we're still going to kind of go through it without actually seeing it in as much detail, but you'll have the ability to do it any other time if it's still down for maintenance. But if you go to our website, and that is where you want to go for all your fishing, your main fishing resources, particularly if you're a newbie just starting out, you'll want to go for all the laws, where to fish initially, where we stock trout, where trophy fishing for other species. There's many other species in the state. Fishing education info, like tonight, like our class tomorrow night, if we're in a normal year, we have over 100 fishing programs. So you go to our website and find one near you. Come out and learn how to fish, or take someone that doesn't know how to fish. And of course, buying your license. If you're 15 years and older, you do need to have a license to fish, and you can get it right on our website. That's the best place to get it now, given that COVID has taken down a lot of the folks that would sell them for us, like the big box stores, are limiting what they're doing now. So some aren't even selling. So the best place is just to log into the computer and get it online. So fishing spots, we'll start with fishing spots near Tewksbury, because that's what's near and dear to you folks. We live in and around that area. And I've done enough programs up there in that area to share some knowledge with you. So if you're going to start, I'd recommend starting in state parks, forests, and reservations, only because they have some infrastructure there. If you're not an ardent angler, you haven't fished a lot of them have bathrooms, a lot of them have rangers, a lot of them have people you can go to for information. So if you're just starting out, these are the parks we've done programs with in your area. There's about 10 or 12 between north of Boston and up against the ocean, but these are the ones that I've done a lot of programs at and had a lot of luck, and can tell you that there's some decent fishing to be had in these four, and they're all within about 20-minute, half-hour drive for you in Tewksbury. Harold Parker is probably the best one, has the most water bodies in it. That's the one. If you watched the talk last week from the Tewksbury Public Library, they had Barbara Bowles from the Department of Conservation and Recreation talking about the state parks in general, but her and I work at Harold Parker every year doing fishing events. And that has about 5 or 6 water bodies. And one of the biggest bass that ever came out of any of my fishing education events came out of Harold Parker State Forest in Berry Pond. A little 6-year-old boy caught a 7-pound bass. And it was an amazing thing to see. That's about a 30-inch fish. And it took him about 20 minutes to land with the help of his father on one of our small kids' starter rod and reels. So pretty cool. There's a lot of good fishing to be had in Field Pond, Berry Pond, the Lorraine camping area, Sudden Pond, Stearns Pond. So there's some good fishing in that state forest, and some good resources there. And if you go to the website, they have the maps of the park you can download and what you can do in the park. Lowell Heritage is right on the Merrimack River. So you're looking for shoreline and a river fishery. That's another really good one. I've done programs on that one. You'll catch smallmouth bass, carp, and pumpkin seed bluegills and the array of panfish. And seasonally in the Merrimack, you'll catch striped bass, which is a saltwater fish, anadromous fish that uses both salt and fresh water for its life stages. So those can get really big, 30 and 40 pounds can be swimming by you in the Merrimack River. So Lowell Heritage is a good one. Walden Pond, Thoreau, the home of Thoreau. In Concord is only a short drive down the road. That's a good smallmouth and largemouth fishery. You do have to pay to park there, but it's a nominal fee, and then you walk down to the water. There's shoreline all the way around, and that's huge if you're just starting and looking for a place to go. You want a place where you can get the shoreline. There's a dedicated beach area, but to both sides of the beach and all the way around the pond is fantastic for fishing. And I've got some decent largemouth and smallmouth there, as well as the pumpkin seed bluegill, calico bass, and other array of smaller sunfish that are related to bass. Breakout Reservation, so it's a real pretty reservation. They have the big kind of cliff walls and bouldery water bodies in there, and they're good for your array of sunfish and bass as well. I've done quite a few programs there. So those are kind of the 4 you can get to within 20 minutes, half hour, and really good one. Really probably the closest one is Harold Parker, and probably one of the best ones if you want to try a state park. I cannot talk about fishing programs in the East, particularly for you folks in Tewksbury. You're only 45 minutes to an hour from the big pond known as the Atlantic Ocean. You've got to try that. Some of you probably already are saltwater anglers, and if you haven't, you should really try it. Saltwater is inherently a little different, a little bit more of a learning curve because it's moving water just like rivers. We always recommend if you're a newbie starting a pond or a lake, still water environments are easier to understand and fish. They're more static. The ocean, like a river, is always moving. The tides are moving in and out and carrying the fish in and out. So get to know the tides. Seasonally, from early to mid-May through mid-October, the fishing can be really good for striped bass, bluefish, mackerel, flounder, scup. Right inshore, even haddock. Right inshore, close to the shoreline, off piers, big docks, off beaches. Short little story. I was up in Salisbury Beach last 2 weeks ago on our family vacation this year. It was what it was reduced to, where we could go for a few days to get away. I went to Salisbury Beach with the family, which consists of my wife and daughter now. My son's too cool for hanging out with us. But so a few days on the beach, and I made the mistake again. Here I am, angler ed instructor, and I'm laying on the beach chilling. It's a family vacation, not thinking about fishing, watching big stripers and blues pounding the surf, only 100 to 150 feet off the shore, boats coming in really tight, and people wading out and fishing in that 65-degree water, which is pretty tough, and catching striped bass right on shore. So I was kind of like, oh, what was I thinking? So the fishing can be really good seasonally in the ocean for some huge fish. Striped bass like this is a little schoolie striper, probably about 15 inches, that fight like you can't believe on medium light tackle. Bluefish can be huge and fight like crazy. This is a little haddock. And there's flounder, which are the flat fish that come right in under docks and off piers, can be a blast. And because they're flat, they fight tremendously. That flat water, that flat formation, that laterally compressed body form makes for great fights. So a couple of areas in Gloucester, we've done programs at Jodrey State Fish Pier, Niles Beach, Dog Bar, Breakwater. Those are easily accessible. walk right out, start casting just larger gear, larger spinning gear or bait casting gear. I would recommend spinning gear if you haven't started. Same as freshwater, just longer poles, bigger reels. You can even use your freshwater gear if it's at least medium action. You'll catch some good stripers on freshwater gear. Keep in mind, bluefish have big teeth, and they'll break your line if you're not prepared for it. So you want to use wire leaders and or thick fluorocarbon leader. Leader is just a little sectional line you put onto your monofilament that protects it from toothy critters. So when the blues are in, and you'll see them, whether bluefish or stripers are in tight to shore and accessible, the birds will come down and let you know, because those big game fish were eating the smaller bait fish. That's why they're there. And the little pieces of bait fish were coming up, and the gulls come down and will hit them. So that's always a key indicator of fish around. As you see birds slapping the surface of the water inshore, you know those big game fish are right underneath there, hitting the bait fish. So easily accessible this time of year, right through early to mid-October. And then they kind of head out. They're more pelagic then, and they kind of head south. Particularly stripers will head south. But don't ignore that if you're in the east. I'm out near Springfield, so I'm a 2-hour, sometimes plus, given traffic. So I get out there a few times a year. But if you're within an hour, gosh, just play the tides. And with tides, you want incoming or outgoing tide. You do not want a low tide or a slack tide where the water's not moving, because then the bait's not moving and the game fish aren't there. So when the tide's coming in or going out, and that's a personal preference. You'll talk to one angler says, oh, he likes an incoming before a high tide. Another angler says he likes an outgoing after the high tide. So it just depends. But you want that moving water, and that the bait fish are going to move around. The game fish are going to be there near it. And then it can turn on really fast and go for a half hour to an hour. Then it can turn off just like that. So it's kind of a fickle nature. But boy, you hook into some of these big fish, it's an absolute blast. So that's your ocean fishing. Other water bodies that aren't state parks in and around Tewksbury that I've done programs in are the Merrimack, Concord, and Ipswich rivers. Good smallmouth fishing, walleye, which is a big yellow perch, and delicious eating fish. One of the best eating fish there is if you like to eat fish. Carp, which are probably one of the biggest fish we have in the state. They feed off the bottom. There's a hardcore small following of people that like to fish for them because they can take upwards of an hour to land. They can get 20, 30 pounds. And then seasonally striped bass in those systems will come into the river following the bait fish in the spring. So rivers, again, moving water, be patient with it. Sometimes fish are there one day and not the next because the bait's moving around, the fish are moving around. You can start in the slower waters. There's plenty of shoreline access in Lowell, Lawrence, in places the Concord and Ipswich flow. So just do your due diligence. Know that they're good fisheries. There's good shoreline. You just got to take some drives and find those little parks along the river. And a good thing to do is find where other anglers are fishing. That's my biggest tip. If you see anglers fishing there, a lot of times that'll tell you all you need to know, that that's a good place to fish. And don't be afraid to pick their brain. Anglers, a lot of people like me, love talking to folks and don't mind sharing their knowledge. And just a simple question, how's the fishing, can open up a whole world for you in some of these water bodies. Lakes, ponds, and reservoirs near and around Tewksbury that I've done programs that are good fisheries. Silver Lake in Wilmington, Nuttings Lake in Billerica has some nice bass. We've caught 3 and 4 pound bass out of that one, both open water and during the ice fishing season. Ice fishing is one of those smaller niche pastimes. You don't see as much in the east anymore because we don't get the ice through the winter as much anymore. But Pomps Pond in Andover is a really good one. We've gotten huge snapping turtles and 3 and 4 pound bass, largemouth bass in those systems. Stiles Pond in Boxford's a really good one. It's got some good shoreline. Hart Pond in Chelmsford and Lake Quantipout in Wakefield. There's 2 big parks along the southern end. Baseball park next to a cemetery, and then just a park right on the due south part of Quantipout, and you get panfish and bass. And if you have access to a watercraft like a canoe or kayak, it has good, decent pike fishery as well. You used to have the state record for tiger muskellunge, which is a muskellunge and a pike hybrid, kind of like the tiger trout hybrid. So species in the still waters like lakes and ponds are more largemouths and pickerel, perch, and sunfish. The smallmouth are more river fish and cooler water fish in the deeper lakes of Cape Cod. So all this information is on our website, however, where you can go. And hopefully now we're going to segue to that for a quick little tour. If it's not working, it's not working. This is what it's meant to look like. I'm going to stop sharing this and start sharing a different resource here. And if it doesn't work, I apologize, folks. I really do. Let's see if I can find it here. Thought I had it up. Hold on just a second. Maybe I crashed it when it crashed. Let me pull the other one back up for a second. Oops, so I guess I can't do both. Exit full screen. Let's see if we can pull that up. It was there, so let me drop that down, rejoin you, and then hopefully share that. There we go. So this is the face of our website. If you just Google MassWildlife, this is what you're going to run into. Buy your license right on that tab. All the information about wildlife in your backyard, questions and answers, fact sheets, you can go here. If you are a hunter or you want to try your hand at hunting, this is your resource page. All of our seasonal announcements and calendars. So if you want to find out about that program tomorrow night that we're running or any other education programs, you'll go there. We're doing a lot of nature walks now in some of our management areas through the fall. So if you want to join in on some of those, we're going to focus on the fishing tab right now, though. And we're going to hopefully open up, if it's cooperating, our freshwater fishing spots. And again, some of these are redundant. You can find the same things in multiple places for ease of use. Now, so it's called the Go Fish Mass digital fishing map. And it was brand new about 2 weeks ago. So maybe there's some glitches and they were working on it. Let me just see. I'll know right away if it's working. And it's working, yay. So we'll skip this little thing. All right, so now we got access to it. So these are all the water bodies we have known information on throughout the state. So if we just beam into your area, and I think I'm gonna kind of be on the edge here a little bit doing this. So you guys are over here in the east, right in this general area. So you can see all the water bodies, some that I've already highlighted for you. Let me tab on a couple and show you a little more detail about them. So Lake Quantapowhat was one of them. And then you'll go to this one and it'll tell you what it is, lake or pond. It'll talk, if it's a featured site, the ones that have the best access, all around access, whether it's shoreline or boat access. And then it'll talk about whether it's trout stocked, if there's a digital depth map, that kind of thing. We do have a pond map for it. It's one of the older ones, but it's still going to show you the layout of the pond, the streets around it, if there's a boat launch on it. And then it's going to have some information about the fishery, what's in it, to help you kind of walk you through what's in it. And the populations, all that good stuff. So that's just one of those wonderful resources that we have, and that's just Lake Quantapowhat. Some of them are enhanced, though, and I want to bring you to try and find one of the more enhanced ones. Let's see if Horn Pond is one of the more enhanced ones. Let's see. Yeah, so we've updated a lot of them. Our fisheries biologists get out and they do what we call bathymetry, so that's underwater contours. You saw it in that primitive one from 100 years ago when they just dropped sounders down and they had to do the bathymetry. Now it's a lot more modern, so you have a lot better view of the water body. So you can see where the deep water is, where the drop-offs are, and the drop-offs are just where the steepest, where the contour lines are stacked up the tightest, so you know where the deep water is, and that can be critical. So if you're targeting trout, and Horn Pond, by the way, is very close to, it's in Woburn, so maybe a half hour, 35 minutes. And that's a really good fishery. We put about 1,000 trout in the spring in that one. It's a good bass fishery, panfish. It's a two-story water body, and it's deep water habitat and shallow water habitat. So we do an event here every year near the boat launch, and it wraps around here, the Horn Pond Family Fishing Festival. I've done clinics there, clinics over on this side of the pond. Clinics up on the northern end of the pond as well. And it's not letting me move too easily through this with my two fingers. And there's good access here as well as near the boat launch site. And this gets you, this area here, this trail gets you right to the drop-off. So if you want to target trout even in the summer, you can catch them there. And so then you would just scroll up and it talks about, again, when this was last sampled, all the fish in it, you know, the different species, the access and all that kind of thing. And then it's updated. It's a lot more user-friendly than the old one. So a lot of our pond maps now are like these pond maps. And we're going to eventually get around to updating all like 300 or 400 water bodies on the map. The map just took out on me. Okay. So now you can use that resource. Even the salt water, if you beam into the salt water, you're going to have access points there. And if you go out to the Berkshires, there's all these water bodies. So if you zoom in tight to the Berkshires, you want to take a day trip out there or a couple days and fish. You've got a lot of these water bodies out here that are just wonderful to fish. You just zoom in on them. Some of them are featured sites, and most of them are going to have the bathymetry if they're featured sites. And if you just tap on it, it's again going to have a pond map and all the good information for you. So no excuse not to be able to find water bodies in Massachusetts to fish. I would recommend if you're going to the Berkshires, Richmond's a good one, but I would focus on Pontusic, Anota, Cheshire, Goose Ponds. Those are just awesome fisheries. Stockbridge Bowls, a really good bass fishery and a pike fishery. Don't overlook those. There's a key here that opens up a lot more that you can target. Ponds with boat access, ponds with trout stock, ones that have the better bathymetry, ones that are featured sites for best access. So it's just a great tool for our customers now, and we're always trying to make it better. If you're not having the greatest experience with this, please reach out to us at MassWildlife. You just reach out. We have an email you can ask questions of, and it's forwarded to the biologist, and we'll return your comments, concerns. And we've made this so much better in the last few years. You move to the middle part of the state, and I would say the Connecticut River, Connecticut River and the Quabbin and Wachusett reservoirs. Quabbin, if you've never been out there, folks, it's like being dropped out of an airplane into Canada. There's 3 fishing sites. You rent a boat, or you bring your own boat if you've gone through their program of having it checked and washed and all that. Some of you may know that. But it's got salmon, landlocked salmon, rainbow trout, smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, white perch, tremendous, particularly smallmouth lake trout and salmon fishery. So that's probably one of your target ones. If you haven't been out in the central to western part of the state, you should check out. And you can go to the website, the Quabbin Reservoir website, and they have all the information about the access sites. We just don't. It's already past quarter, so we don't have a lot of time to focus on that. I want to allow time for questions. So I'm gonna back this out, folks, and then open it up to any questions you may have. I would just say that don't ignore this part of the state. The Southeast and the Cape, not only the saltwater resources, the freshwater resources down here. Look at all these ponds and lakes, overlooked, because people are fishing for stripers and blues and tuna all through the summer, and these don't get fished that much, and they're great smallmouth, largemouth fisheries. We stock them heavily with trout because they're deep water. So make some trips to the Cape and the Southeast in general. These kettle ponds and lakes are just awesome fisheries. Probably the most rich fisheries we have in the entire state, if you would consider freshwater and saltwater. So I'm gonna jump back into I'm gonna stop sharing this and just quickly end the PowerPoint.
Great. So Jim, we do have a few questions in the chat. Did
Awesome.
you want to start addressing those now?
Yeah, we can get right into them. I just want to add that.
Oh yeah, keep going. Sorry.
I got like 2 slides. Once you find the right water body, always focus on habitat, structure. Just like with real estate, location is key for a buyer. With fishing, it's habitat. So you see these fish, they're not sitting out on the beach. They're sitting in weeds, under the boulders, in the lily pads. Look for that. That offers shade. That offers habitat. Small bait fish hide from larger fish. Larger fish lay in wait for smaller fish. So always look for that. And these are all the variables. We don't have time. If you take the class tomorrow night, and we're going to have one on bass, look on our website, Bass Fishing 101, next 2 weeks from now on the 22nd. It's a 2-hour bass fishing presentation, then a trout fishing presentation the opposite night on a Facebook Live. So if you want more in depth on species, just sign up for those. Facebook Live, you don't have to sign up. Just tune in. The bass fishing one, you have to register like you registered this one. And after that, the easiest catching fish at this time of year are the sunfish family. And start in lakes and ponds and start fishing when it's warmer. Thank you, folks. Any questions?
Sorry, Jim. So you covered an incredible amount of information in 45 minutes. That was very impressive.
Yeah, I kind of needed an hour or two, I think, unfortunately.
That's okay. That's okay. Lesson learned. And, you know, if we go a little long with the questions, that's fine too.
Okay.
Only a few questions so far in the chat, though. So I would encourage anyone on the line, feel free to type a question or comment into the chat. And sure. Also, if you'd like to ask an audio or video question, just indicate that in the chat, and then I'll unmute you. Let's see here. Diane wants to know, do you need a separate license for freshwater versus saltwater fishing?
Great question, Diane.
Yep. How much does a license cost? And is it a license per person or per family?
Great questions, all of them. So yes, separate salt and fresh. Salt is a permit fee. You need it from 16 to 59. 16 above is free. Under 16 is free. It's $10. You don't need it if you charter a boat. You go out on one of those big fishing excursions. The captains have the permits. But if you're just throwing a lure off a pier, off the beach, you need to have that $10 permit. You can get that right on our website too, or the Division Marine website. Freshwater, it's $27.50 from the age of 18 up to 64, 65, 69. It's reduced half price, and then 70 above, it's free. And it's individuals. It's not family. Here's the deal. If you have children 14 and under, they don't need a license, and you don't need one to help them fish. You need one if you're in control of the rod in the line. So if you just help put bait on, whether you're a parent or a grandparent and the child wants to go fishing, if you're confident you're not going to grab that rod at any time and actually enjoy fishing yourself, you don't need a license if you're just helping them. So keep that in mind. But it's not families. It's calendar year, individuals, and yeah, separate salt and fresh.
David recommends an app called FishBrain.
Yep.
Not sure if you've heard of that, Jim, but
we have, and we've thought about developing our own, but I don't think we could do anywhere near justice to that one. That's a really cool one. Yeah, and definitely check it out, folks, if you want even another level of fishing knowledge by water body, by region, by location. Great tip there. Was it David that said that?
Correct. Yes.
Great tip, David. FishBrain, check it out.
Jennifer has a request. Can Jim briefly discuss the importance of cleaning up after yourself after fishing, such as fishing line and hooks in regards to wildlife?
Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, no question. And that's something we really talk about in all our in-person group programs, and something I really harp on in our virtual fishing classes like the one tomorrow night. So leave no trace. We practice that. And if you're not practicing that, shame on you. Please. We show an impactful slide of dead birds, particularly birds key in on fishing line, discarded fishing line, because they use it for nesting material, and it does weave a heck of a nest, but the chicks and the adults get tangled up in it and die. Birds key in it all the time. I have a picture of a peregrine falcon chick that's dead. That's an endangered species. That was dead, tangled up in fishing line because the mother thought that would be great for the nest. So people inadvertently, most of the time, I want to believe that they're so anxious to get fishing, they clip their tangled line, put it on the ground with the meaning to take it out with them, but they forget it, and that's plastic. And that's one bad thing about monofilament. It'll last hundreds of years out there exposed, and the birds and wildlife key in on it, and even people can get tangled up in it and fall and trip on it. So yeah, bring your hooks especially out with you, bobbers, those plastic round balls, bring those out. Bring anything. Leave no trace. Take everything out. And if you have extra room in your bag or your tackle box, and you see discarded fishing line in particular, take that. That's critical. Thank you, Jennifer. Absolutely. Be a good steward to the outdoors. Don't be a slob. Don't be that person. We think it's probably 4 or 5% of people that do that. It looks like a lot more, and I'm just hoping in my heart of heart it's not.
Liz wants to know, as the water gets colder, what color lure is the best to use for bass and trout?
Well, as the water gets colder, it's not as big a deal. It's really water clarity. So if the water is crystal clear, you'll want to use clearer colored lures, and you'll want to be more careful because fish can see really well, and in clear water they can see you really well. And as the water gets murkier and muddier and murkier, you want to use dark colored lures, and the fish could be a lot closer to you. They don't need to hide as far away in that murky water. But keep in mind, they can hear you really well too. Deeper water, the color is going to wash out almost in general. So I would say if there is any color that holds up in deeper water, it's going to be like chartreuse or maybe those brighter whites. But all color does wash out as the water gets deeper because sunlight washes out. So I would say get a lure that has some kind of a vibration or a rattle to it in the deeper water. Those seem to work really good because fish have this sixth sense called the lateral line, and they key in on vibration. So when they don't see really well in that deeper water, they can hear that lure coming, and they can hear fish coming. So I would focus more on chartreuse and white and anything that makes a noise.
John would like clarification. Are water reservoirs okay to fish in? We skipped Horn Pond because of this last weekend. Oh no,
Horn Pond's wide open. Horn is like an old secondary or tertiary drinking water supply. Just, do your due diligence, call the town. The towns are all going to have that information if it's a drinking water supply. I know it's got the pump station on it, looks real impressive. And sometimes certain days there's no one fishing it, but that's a public water body. A lot of reservoirs are open to the public, particularly ones that aren't used as drinking water anymore or ones that are like backup to the backup supplies. But there are ones that are closed. So just, if you're not sure, if you don't see anyone fishing it, just call the town. The town office is the Department of DPW, and the town Department of Public Works is kind of in charge of a lot of the pump stations, and they'll know that information right away. But I would say probably 60 to 70% of reservoirs, and not all reservoirs were created for drinking water. Some were flood control. Some were created just for beauty and looks and for people's enjoyment. But, vast majority of them are drinking water, but some aren't even used anymore so you can fish.
Diane wants to know, how much does it cost to get started fishing? I mean,
Great question.
This isn't golf or hockey or something.
No, gosh, no. And thank you for that question. That's one we get all the time too. That simple live bait rig I showed you with a push button spin casting rod and reel, a handful of bobbers, which are strike indicators, let you know if a fish is biting, a few hooks. We recommend circle hooks and bait you can collect in your yard. That's only going to cost you, the rod and reel, $20, $25 with some terminal tackle. The license, if you're 18 to 64, is $27.50. It's been that way for almost 30 years. If you're 15 to 17, it's free. You need to still have it. You go to our website and get it. You have to pay a service fee of $1, $1.25 to print it out, but it's essentially free. If you're 65 to 69, it's dropped in half price, and 70 above, it's free again. So really, if you put that fee to $27.50 with the little you need, you can probably get away with $50 or $60 as an initial investment, but the sky's the limit. Like every pastime, if you add, higher end rod and reels, boats, canoes, kayaks, lures. Be careful with lures. Don't run out and buy lures right away. Lures catch as many anglers as they do fish, and and the tackle industry loves it, but beware.
David recommends Haggett's Pond in Andover, and he also says that he's been getting good luck recently fishing in Long Pond here in Tewksbury.
Thank you, David. Awesome. See, those are ones we don't do. Hackett's and Long, we don't do programs on. So I appreciate that. That's fantastic. Add that to the other 6 or so that I showed you. And there's probably more. We tell folks, don't overlook the little farm pond you drive by on your way to work or school. Just ask the landowner permission. You'd be surprised what is in the tiniest little half-acre pond. It's astonishing sometimes. So just take a drive and do a little homework, and you'll be surprised what's out there.
Last question goes to Diane, and this is a good way for you to plug, upcoming classes here. Diane wants to know, how much do your classes cost?
Awesome, Diane. Most of them are all free. All the big fishing festivals, any classes that we set up and run are free. The only times there's a nominal charge when we partner with like the not Department of Conservation, those are all free. When we partner with town recreation departments. It just recoups, like if they buy the bait or they bring refreshments or their registration fees, that kind of thing. So it might be $2 a person or $5 a family. And those are all on our website. And when you sign up, you'll see that there's a small fee, but most all our programs, I'd say 60 to 70% are free, no charge at all. And go to our website and check out what we've got coming. We have a few more for this year. We will hopefully be back doing in-person group programs next year. Fingers crossed, back to 100+ programs working with you folks.
That would be wonderful. So, Jim, is there any last words you have for the group? We've just hit 8 o'clock, and I think we've exhausted all the questions in the chat, so very good timing. So anything else you want to leave us with? Yes, if you want more information, seek us out. We have a couple more classes coming up, and I already talked about, just go to our website, go to the calendar section, and get out and fish, get out and camp, get out and hike, get out and bird watch, get out and mountain climb, get out. Get inspired by nature. You will be mentally and physically better off for it. Believe me. More people than ever are finding that out. MassWildlife wants you to love and care about the resource. No better way to do it, to learn about it, than to get out and care about it. And all the state parks and reservations are right in your back door for the most part. Great. Well, thank you so much, Jim, for for this wonderful presentation. And just a reminder to folks, I'm going to send an email out tomorrow morning with a feedback survey. Just let me know what you thought of tonight's event and what you'd like to see for future events. Yep. And I would anticipate that Tewksbury Telemedia will have this up on local access TV and up on the town's YouTube channel. I would say within 3 to 5 business days. So awesome. You can look for that as well. One last thing, Jim. Yep. One last thing, Robert. I can send this to you as a PDF, and if anyone's interested, just email Robert, if you'll allow him, Robert, and I can send this program to you so you have the local fishing areas and those few tips and tricks right on your computer at home. Jim, that would be wonderful. If you could do that tonight or tomorrow morning, that'd be great. We'll do it. And I'll send it out with the same email that I send out the survey. That'd be great. All right. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you, everyone, tonight. Yes. Excellent. Again, yep. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jennifer. And everyone, we'll see you soon. Thanks so much and have a great night.